For centuries, the galaxy's deadliest species ruled the stars. These beings, living on hostile planets, believed themselves to be the apex predators, their claws and teeth sharp enough to defeat anything in their way. They had no reason to fear anyone or anything. That was, until a simple accident changed everything. It all started when a small ship carrying explorers from the outer reaches of the galaxy crashed onto a forgotten planet. The ship was barely intact, its passengers injured but alive. They were stranded on a planet that seemed abandoned, dark skies, dense forests, and strange, unsettling noises filling the air. They thought they had simply found a planet with no life, but they were wrong. The planet wasn't empty. The explorers soon realized that something or someone was watching them. At first, they thought it was just the planet's wildlife. But as days passed, strange things began to happen. Food supplies vanished. Tools disappeared. Footprints appeared in the dirt, too small to belong to any of the creatures they had seen. They were being stalked. But by who? The explorers weren't ready to admit it, but something in the back of their minds told them they were not alone. They were being hunted. One night, as they huddled around a fire, trying to figure out their next move, a shadow moved across the trees in the distance. It was quick, barely visible, but it was there. The explorers quickly armed themselves and began searching the area. But when they reached the spot where they saw the shadow, there was no sign of life, just the silent, eerie forest. Then, something worse happened. They found a message, carved into a tree in a language none of them recognized. The message was simple but chilling. Humans are not what you think. Confused and frightened, they began to search for answers. That's when they discovered something unbelievable. The planet they had crashed on wasn't just a forgotten world, it had a history. A long, dark history. Humans had once lived there, long before the galaxy's current rulers had even been born. The message was a warning. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. The explorers dug deeper into the planet's secrets. They found ancient ruins, technology far beyond what any of them had ever seen. It was clear now humans had been the true masters of this planet. They had once ruled with incredible strength and intelligence, bending nature and technology to their will. But then, the humans had mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind only their advanced artifacts and hidden knowledge. As the explorers continued to investigate, they uncovered something even more shocking: evidence that the humans hadn't vanished at all. They had gone into hiding. And they had been watching the galaxy's most dangerous species for centuries, studying them from the shadows. The humans had never truly been gone. They were waiting. The explorers now realized they were not alone on this planet. The message carved into the tree was no mere warning. It was a declaration. Humanity had been hiding, waiting for the moment to strike back. And that moment was coming soon. One by one, the explorers began to disappear. No one knew where they went, but they could feel the presence of something hunting them. The planet itself seemed to shift, as if it were alive, changing to trap them. The explorers had no choice but to stay together, fearing that if they split up, they would never see each other again. In the dead of night, one of the explorers, a man named Eli, spotted something moving in the trees. This time, he wasn't going to let it slip away. Armed with a weapon, he crept into the forest, determined to uncover the truth. As he moved deeper into the woods, the sounds of the planet grew louder: growls, whispers, and footsteps that didn't belong to him. Suddenly, Eli froze. There, standing just a few meters ahead, was a figure human in shape, but unlike any human he had ever seen. The figure was tall, wearing a suit of strange, glowing armor. Its eyes were cold, and there was a sense of power that radiated from it. This wasn't a creature to be underestimated. The figure spoke in a language Eli didn't understand, but there was no mistaking the tone. It was clear this human was not just a survivor. This was a hunter. The figure took a step forward, and Eli instinctively raised his weapon. But before he could react, the figure raised a hand, and the weapon in Eli's hand flew out of his grip, as if the human had somehow controlled it with a thought. Eli stumbled back, terrified. He had no idea who or what this person was. The figure spoke again, but this time Eli could understand the words. "You have seen too much." With a sudden movement, the figure vanished into the shadows. Eli was left standing there, his heart pounding. He realized with chilling certainty that the humans were not the weak species they had been told about. They were predators, and they had been waiting for the right time to strike. As the last of the explorers gathered together, they realized their fate was sealed. The humans were not just survivors, they were hunters. And they had been hidden in the galaxy, waiting for the moment when they could emerge and take back their place as the true rulers of the stars. The explorers, once proud and confident in their strength, now knew the terrible truth. The galaxy's deadliest species were nothing compared to humanity. And they were the prey. The galaxy had been at war for as long as anyone could remember. Massive battles were fought across countless worlds, with species as old as the stars themselves vying for power. Each species had its own mighty warriors, technologies that could destroy entire planets, and ruthless tactics that left nothing but ashes in their wake. For centuries, they had fought to rule the stars, believing no one could ever challenge their supremacy. But they were wrong. It all started with a small, seemingly insignificant event, a distress signal from a distant, uncharted planet. At first, no one thought much of it. Another ship lost in the vastness of space, another mission gone wrong. The species that ruled the galaxy paid little attention. After all, what harm could a few scattered humans on a forgotten world cause? The answer came quickly. The humans had been hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. They were no longer the weak, primitive species that had once been wiped out by the galaxy's deadliest creatures. They had grown stronger, smarter, deadlier, and they were ready for war. The first sign of humanity's power came when a fleet of alien ships, led by the mighty Krovax, a massive insect-like species, attacked a small human outpost on a barren moon. The Krovax had crushed every other species they had encountered, but this time, something was different. The battle didn't go as expected. The humans fought back with an unexpected ferocity, using tactics that confused and overwhelmed the Krovax forces. The Krovax fleet was forced to retreat, leaving behind a trail of destroyed ships and soldiers. Word of the defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had long thought of humanity as weak and insignificant began to take notice. The Krovax were not a species to be trifled with. If they could be beaten, then maybe the rest of the galaxy wasn't as safe as they thought. As the galaxy's rulers tried to make sense of what had happened, they began to see the signs humans had been preparing for something. Hidden weapons caches were discovered on various planets. Long-forgotten warships were being activated, and strange human technologies were appearing in the most unexpected places. It became clear that humanity had been building something massive. The galaxy's rulers were now on edge, unsure of what was coming. It wasn't long before the humans made their move. They struck without warning, launching an attack on one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, the Vashnaks. The Vashnaks had ruled with an iron fist, their empire stretching across thousands of worlds. No one had ever dared challenge them until now. The humans had learned from the best. They studied the Vashnaks' tactics, their strengths, and their weaknesses. They attacked swiftly and decisively, crippling the Vashnaks' communication networks and supply lines. The Vashnak war machine ground to a halt as the humans launched hit-and-run attacks on their most vulnerable targets. The Vashnaks, once thought unbeatable, were now fighting for their survival. The war had begun. The galaxy's deadliest species had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The war spread across the stars. More and more species were drawn into the conflict. The humans fought with a strength and precision that left their enemies in awe. They were everywhere on every battlefield, in every corner of the galaxy. They were no longer the weaklings that had once been thought easily wiped out. They had evolved into a force that could not be ignored. With each victory, humanity's power grew. The galaxy's rulers were forced to rethink their strategies. The once proud empires of the galaxy were now in a desperate struggle for survival. The humans had turned the tide of war in their favor, and there was no stopping them. But as humanity's power grew, so did the resistance. The Vashnaks, the Krovax, and other species began to unite, forming an alliance against the humans. The war had become a fight for the future of the galaxy. The humans, however, were not intimidated. They were determined to win, no matter the cost. The final battle was inevitable. It came when the humans, now leading a massive coalition of species, launched a full-scale assault on the heart of the galaxy, an ancient, massive city controlled by the ruling elite. The elite had spent centuries ruling with fear, their power unchallenged. But the humans had other plans. In the final hours before the battle, the humans' leader, General Alexei, stood before his forces. His message was simple: we rise not to conquer but to survive. The galaxy will be ours, not because we are the strongest, but because we will never stop fighting. As the battle began, the humans unleashed everything they had. They had built weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen: energy blasts that could tear through entire fleets, soldiers equipped with advanced armor, and ships that moved with the precision of a deadly predator. The elite's forces, though powerful, were no match for the humans' ingenuity and determination. The final moments of the battle were nothing short of catastrophic. The heart of the galaxy, once a symbol of power, was reduced to rubble as the humans emerged victorious. The ruling species, once thought invincible, had fallen. The galaxy would never be the same again. In the end, the humans did not just win the war. They changed the galaxy forever. They proved that even the smallest, most overlooked species could rise to become the most powerful force in the universe. And as the galaxy's old empires crumbled, humanity stood at the center, ready to lead a new era, one where they would never again be underestimated. The last war had been fought, and humanity had emerged victorious. The galaxy had always been a place of chaos. Wars raged across countless worlds, with alien species constantly fighting for control, and some of the most brutal of these species were known for their ability to dominate with overwhelming force. Among them were the Xzar, the Vantor, and the Drax, the deadliest species the galaxy had ever known. They had ruled for centuries, and there was no sign of any species strong enough to challenge their reign. However, one thing these powerful species never expected was the silent invasion that was already unfolding right under their noses. It all began on a quiet, insignificant world called Terra. The people of Terra were simple, peaceful beings, humans. They were thought to be a primitive species, with no advanced technology and no real power. The galaxy's rulers, in their arrogance, never gave them a second thought. They saw the humans as nothing more than a curiosity, a species to study, but not one to worry about. They were wrong. For years, humans had been secretly building their strength, studying their enemies from the shadows, and preparing for the moment when they would rise. And now, that moment had come. It started with a small fleet of ships, barely noticeable on the sensors of the great galactic empires. The ships were small, sleek, and unremarkable, but they were carrying something far more dangerous than anyone could imagine: human soldiers trained for war in ways no one had seen before. The ships quietly moved through space, slipping past the watchful eyes of the galaxy's rulers, like shadows in the night. At first, no one noticed them. The Xer, the Vantor, and the Drax were too busy with their own conflicts to care about a few ships traveling quietly in the depths of space. But soon, strange reports began to surface. Ships went missing without a trace. Entire fleets vanished, leaving nothing but the wreckage of broken ships. The ruling species started to wonder who could be responsible for such precise attacks. The answer came when the first major battle took place. A massive Drax warship, the Kavran, was ambushed by a fleet of small human ships. It was an unexpected attack, one that left the Drax stunned. The battle was quick, brutal, and efficient. The humans had outmaneuvered them at every turn, using tactics that no one had ever seen before. The Kavran was destroyed, its crew wiped out in a matter of hours. The galaxy's deadliest species were shocked. They had never faced an enemy that could move so quietly, so swiftly. The humans had infiltrated their ranks, without anyone even noticing. This wasn't a war that could be fought in the traditional way. They were being attacked by an invisible enemy. As the attacks continued, the humans' methods became clearer. They didn't fight in open battles. Instead, they struck at the heart of the enemy, disrupting communications, sabotaging weapons, and spreading confusion. Their targets were always well chosen: leaving the galaxy's rulers scrambling to defend themselves against an enemy they couldn't see. The leaders of the galaxy's deadliest species held meetings, trying to figure out who could be behind the attacks. The Vantor, known for their strength and brutal tactics, thought they had the answer. It must be a rival species, they argued. No one else could strike with such precision. But the truth was more terrifying than any of them could have imagined. It was humans, the quiet, unnoticed species that no one had taken seriously. They had been preparing for this moment, learning the weaknesses of the galaxy's rulers, and now they were making their move. The Vantor, Xzar and Drax, once the dominant forces in the galaxy, soon found themselves fighting a war on multiple fronts. They were attacked where they least expected it on their home planets, in the depths of space, and within their own fleets. The humans didn't need to launch massive attacks. They simply struck where it hurt the most, using small, stealthy forces that would disappear into the shadows after each victory. With each battle, the fear grew. The ruling species couldn't figure out how the humans were doing it. How were they able to strike so quickly, with such deadly force? How were they always one step ahead? The truth was that the humans had a secret, something far more dangerous than their technology. Their ability to adapt. As the war raged on, the humans began to gain more ground. Their tactics became even more advanced as they learned from each encounter. They knew when to retreat and when to attack, using every opportunity to weaken their enemies. The Xzar, the Drax, and the Vantor were now fighting not just for victory, but for survival. The galaxy's rulers were forced to unite, but even then, the silent invasion had turned into an all-out war and the humans were winning. No longer were they a forgotten species. No longer were they the underdogs. They had become the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The turning point came when the humans launched their final strike against the heart of the galaxy, the massive capital planet of the Vantor Empire. This was the stronghold of their power, the symbol of their dominance. The humans, however, had already infiltrated the planet's defenses. They knew its weaknesses. They knew exactly when and where to strike. In a stunning coordinated attack, the Vantor's capital was taken. The galaxy's most feared species were now facing the terrifying truth. The humans had not only invaded, they had conquered. In silence, in shadows, and with patience, they had risen to become the true rulers of the stars. The silent invasion had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same. And the once mighty species who had ruled for so long were left in awe of the quiet power that had emerged from the darkness. The galaxy was a place of endless conflict, where every species fought to maintain power and dominance. Some were brutal, some were cunning, and some had mastered the art of war. Among them, the Kintar were known as the most feared predators, a ruthless, highly intelligent species who controlled vast regions of space with terror and precision. Their soldiers were elite warriors, and their fleet was nearly unbeatable. The galaxy's other species trembled at the mere mention of their name. But there was something the Kintar never expected, something that would soon threaten everything they had fought for. It began on a small, seemingly insignificant planet in the Outer Rim. The planet, called Arcos, had been left alone for centuries, mostly ignored by the galaxy's rulers. Its inhabitants were human, but they were different from the humans most people knew. These humans had been living in isolation, hiding from the galaxy's constant wars, and developing in their own way away from the reach of the powerful species that ruled the stars. The Kintar, always on the lookout for new worlds to conquer, had no reason to suspect that Arcos would be anything more than another simple, uninhabited planet. But they were wrong. One fateful day, a Kintar reconnaissance ship entered the system, scanning Arcos. At first, the sensors didn't pick up anything unusual. The planet seemed quiet, peaceful even. But as the ship moved closer, something strange happened. The ship's systems began to malfunction. Lights flickered. The hull groaned under an unseen pressure. And then, without warning, the ship was hit by a barrage of energy blasts. In an instant, the ship was destroyed. The Kintar warlord, Raxor, was furious. His pride had been wounded. How could something so small, so insignificant, have defeated one of his ships? He ordered his fleet to move toward Arcos, intent on teaching the humans a lesson they would never forget. What Raxor didn't know was that Arcos was not an ordinary world. The humans who lived there had a dark secret one that had been buried deep within the planet for centuries. A secret that no one had dared to disturb until now. When the Kintar fleet arrived at Arcos, they found nothing but an eerie silence. There were no signs of life. No defenses. It seemed too easy. The Kintar soldiers landed on the surface, expecting to find an unprepared and helpless enemy. But instead, they found something far worse. The humans of Arcos were not the weak, primitive beings the Kintar had expected. They were hunters, silent, deadly, and highly skilled. For centuries, they had lived in the shadows, honing their skills, becoming one with the planet itself. They had learned how to blend in, to move unnoticed, and to strike with terrifying precision. They had become the ultimate predators. The Kintar soldiers began to realize, too late, that they were not the hunters, they were the prey. One by one, the Kintar soldiers were picked off, disappearing into the dark forests of Arcos. The humans didn't attack in open combat. Instead, they used the planet's terrain to their advantage, setting traps, using the environment to conceal their movements. The Kintar soldiers grew more and more paranoid, sensing that they were being watched from the shadows. But there was no escape. The humans were everywhere, their attacks coming without warning. No Kintar soldier was safe, and the once proud fleet was being torn apart by an unseen enemy. The Kintar had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Raxor, desperate to find answers, ordered a search of the entire planet. His soldiers scoured the landscape, looking for any sign of life. But all they found were bodies, Kintar bodies, scattered across the planet like broken toys. It was clear that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had imagined. Then, in the heart of the planet, Raxor found something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Hidden deep within an ancient cave system, the Kintar warlord discovered a series of markings, carved into the walls. They were older than anything the Kintar had ever seen. The markings told a story of a time long ago, when the humans of Arcos had been created by a force more powerful than any species in the galaxy. They were not simply a race of beings, but something far more terrifying. They were the hunters, the predators, the apex species of the universe. And they had been hidden for centuries, waiting for the right moment to rise. As Raxor pieced together the ancient text, he realized the terrible truth. The humans of Arcos were not ordinary beings. They were the last survivors of an ancient race of predators who had once ruled the galaxy. Over time, their species had been hunted down and nearly wiped out by the galaxy's powerful empires. But some had survived, hiding in the shadows, biding their time. And now they were rising again. Raxor was forced to confront the reality of his situation. The Kintar were not the top predators in the galaxy anymore. They were being hunted by a species far older and more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. The humans of Arcos were not just survivors, they were the true predators, and the galaxy was about to learn that the greatest danger came not from the outside, but from within. As the Kintar fleet retreated, Raxor's thoughts turned dark. The Kintar were no longer the apex predators. The humans had awakened the predator within themselves, and now the galaxy would feel their wrath. The galaxy was on the edge of destruction. After years of brutal war, the once proud empires had fallen into chaos. Alien species, each more powerful than the last, had fought endlessly for dominance, leaving entire systems in ruin. Cities turned to dust, and entire civilizations were wiped off the map in an instant. The peacekeepers, the ones who once brought stability, had failed. Now, the galaxy was dying, and no one knew how to save it. In the darkest corner of the galaxy, a whisper had begun to spread, a whisper of a force, a last hope, capable of changing everything. This hope, however, wasn't a fleet of powerful warships, or a superweapon that could obliterate entire planets. No, it was something much more subtle, something no one had seen coming. It was the humans. The humans had been overlooked for centuries. They were considered weak, primitive creatures in a galaxy full of more advanced species. Their technology was rudimentary, their fleet small and their power insignificant compared to the mighty empires of the stars. But as the galaxy's rulers fought each other to the bitter end, the humans had quietly been growing, learning, and preparing. They had studied their enemies, honed their skills, and now they were ready to do what no one else could: unite the galaxy and save it from itself. The human fleet, led by Admiral Elena Strathmore, was small, but it was the most well-coordinated and resourceful fleet in the galaxy. Elena had been a commander for years, watching as the galaxy tore itself apart. She had seen the desperation in the eyes of the survivors on countless planets, and she knew what had to be done. The galaxy needed something more than war. It needed a leader, someone who could unite the fractured species and end the endless cycle of violence. The first step in their plan was simple: disrupt the ongoing wars. The humans, with their small but efficient fleet, attacked key military bases across the galaxy, disabling the most powerful warships without causing mass destruction. The goal wasn't to annihilate the enemy. It was to create chaos in the war efforts, forcing the species to pause and rethink their paths. At first, no one understood what was happening. The leaders of the galaxy's warring factions couldn't fathom that the attacks were being carried out by such a small fleet. But as the attacks continued, something strange began to happen. The species that had once fought each other began to listen. The humans were sending a message, one of peace, but also of strength. They showed that it was possible to bring an end to the violence, but it required something that the galaxy's rulers had forgotten: unity. Admiral Strathmore's fleet began to make a name for itself. It wasn't just their skill in battle that made them stand out, but their ability to bring together the most unlikely allies. The Vantor, once enemies of the Kintar, found themselves sitting side by side in negotiations with their former rivals. The Drex, a species known for their brutal conquest of weaker planets, were forced to reconsider their ways when the humans reached out with offers of cooperation, not conflict. The galaxy's rulers, now on the defensive, sent their best fleets to stop the human advance. But no matter how powerful their ships were, or how skilled their commanders, the humans always seemed to be one step ahead. They had learned from their enemies, and they understood that victory wasn't always about firepower. It was about strategy, diplomacy, and using every tool at their disposal. With each victory, the humans grew bolder. They didn't just fight for territory, they fought for something much greater: peace. They were taking on the impossible task of bringing an end to the galaxy's endless wars, one small step at a time. And with every battle won, the galaxy began to take notice. Slowly, very slowly, the other species began to see the humans as more than just survivors. They saw them as the last hope, the only ones who could stop the madness. But the greatest challenge lay ahead. The ruling empires, seeing that their power was slipping away, were not willing to give up their control without a fight. The Krovax, the most brutal of the galaxy's factions, were the first to rally their forces against the humans. They had seen what had happened to the other species, and they would not let it happen to them. The Krovax launched a massive assault on the human fleet, hoping to crush them once and for all. The battle was fierce, the largest of its kind in decades. For hours, the two fleets clashed in a deadly dance of lasers and missiles, each side fighting for survival. The humans held their ground, refusing to back down, but the Krovax were relentless. In the middle of the chaos, Admiral Strathmore made a bold decision. She ordered her fleet to engage the Krovax flagship in a daring attack. The flagship, the Dread Strike, was the heart of the Krovax fleet. If it fell, the rest of the Krovax forces would crumble. But the Dread Strike was heavily guarded, and the odds were stacked against them. As the human ships made their way toward the flagship, Strathmore's voice came over the comms, calm but determined: "We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for the future. Hold the line." With a combination of bravery, skill, and a bit of luck, the humans managed to breach the Krovax flagship's defenses. The Dread Strike fell, and with it, the Krovax fleet began to disintegrate. The humans had achieved the impossible.